Good afternoon, and welcome to today's NHLBI Small Biz Hangout, Reimbursement Basics. Our presenters today are Jennifer Fillman and Jan Nielsen from Cardinal Health Specialty Solutions. Next slide, please. If you can't hear us, please click the Call Me icon on your screen and enter your phone number for the meeting to call you. Or, if you are calling in using your own phone, please use the number listed on this slide. It should be also the number included in your registration confirmation, and use the access code 621-574-423. Next slide, please. The NHLBI Small Biz Hangout have been designed to help our small business applicants and awardees understand topic areas critical for biomedical innovator success. To date, we've had a number of events focused on regulatory considerations, market space analysis, and intellectual property. The Small Biz Web Hangouts are archived on YouTube at the bit.ly link shown and can be accessed from any computer or mobile device. Next slide, please. If you'd like to find out about more NHLBI Small Biz Hangouts, where to meet up with the Office of Translational Alliances and Coordination in person here at NHLBI, or upcoming educational or funding opportunities that the Institute is promoting, please sign up for our listserv at http://bit.ly/NHLBI-SBIR-list. Next slide, please. And if you would like a copy of today's slides, we'd like to encourage you to please provide your email address in the brief feedback form that you'll see at the end of this webinar. It will either pop up in a new window or in a new tab, and all you need to do is just put in your email address and tell us that you'd like the slides. Alternatively, you can simply email us at nhlbi_SBIR@mail.nih.gov. Next slide, please. If you have questions during the event, I'd like to encourage you to use the chat window on the lower right hand of the screen. You'll not be able to see each other's questions. Only we as the panelists and presenters will see them. However, I assure you that we will get them and we will respond to those that are appropriate. We will not be able to answer product-specific questions during today's event, as it is more of a general overview of reimbursement basics as advertised. Next slide, please. So today's presenters are Jennifer Fillman, who is the Vice President and General Manager of Cardinal Health Specialty Solutions, where she oversees the organization's capabilities in access and patient support, healthcare marketing and analytics, and third-party logistics. Since joining Cardinal Health in 1995, Jennifer has held a series of financial leadership and senior management positions, most recently as the Vice President of Finance for the Specialty Solutions business. She previously served as Vice President of Financial Planning and Analysis, where she managed budgeting and forecasting and led Cardinal Health's finance succession planning talent management efforts. Jennifer has held prior positions at Cardinal Health in both finance and operations roles, including as the Director of Accounting for Nuclear Pharmacy Services, the Manager of Investor Relations, and as a Reimbursement Services Supervisor. Jennifer earned a bachelor's degree in Economics Management and German from Ohio Wesleyan University and an MBA with a finance concentration from the University of Dayton. As the Vice President of Access and Patient Support, Jan Nielsen, our second presenter, directs and provides vision for this group. Beginning her career as a registered nurse, Jan has had more than 20 years of experience providing innovation and leadership in healthcare. She has developed and launched best-in-class patient adherence solutions in both the pharmaceutical and payer environments. Her inventive programs and technical solutions have demonstrated and delivered improved outcomes and measurable returns on investment. Jan has held executive roles in clinical services and care management for a large patient access and adherence organization and a medical products and services company that provided critical therapies for people with life-threatening conditions. She's the former COO of a specialty care company dedicated to the care of end-stage renal disease and chronic kidney disease. Jan earned a master's degree in public administration and a bachelor's degree in human services from Notre Dame, and her nursing degree from the U.S. Army School of Nursing. As you can tell from their bios, these ladies are highly qualified and experienced to talk to us today about reimbursement basics, and I hope that you will enjoy the webinar that we've prepared for you today. Thank you so much, and welcome, Jennifer and Jan.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Chris. This is Jennifer. I'm going to start the presentation today, and then Jan will cover the topics toward the end of the presentation today. So if we move on to the next slide, I'll just give a basic overview of what we plan to cover today. The agenda for today, we'd like for you at the end of the time today to be able to understand some of the basics around insurance coverage, payers, what do we mean when we talk about payers and those people taking financial risk, coding, how do we, importantly, how do we make sure that we are preparing the claim effectively to be paid, payment, I think, which is the end goal here, is to make sure that these products get paid for, and then developing a reimbursement strategy for your pharmaceutical or your product. And moving to the next slide, we're going to start with fundamentals of coverage. And if we move to some basic terminology that we're going to use throughout the presentation today, just to level set on some of these terms that you'll hear us talk about throughout our time today. Coverage is the terms and conditions under which a private or public health plan will pay for a product or service. So you'll often say, is it covered? Is it covered under my medical benefit or my pharmacy benefit? So we'll talk a lot about the terms of coverage. Codes, the next term that we're going to talk quite a bit about, codes are unique identifiers for products or services that are used in claims processing. So in particular today we're talking about generally codes for pharmaceutical products or medical devices. And then payment is the methodology by which a product or service is reimbursed. And so that's the end goal. We want to make sure that people using the products that have been put forth in the marketplace are able to be paid for, and that process is through the reimbursement methodologies. Moving on to the next slide, fundamentals of coverage. So we talk about we understand the term coverage, and now if we look at benefit structures, drugs are managed across different benefit structures associated with different models of care and cost controls. And so generally you hear the coverage lumped into two parts of a plan or of a coverage structure. And so on the one hand, we have the pharmacy benefit. And pharmacy benefit products are typically self-administered. They're oral medications that you can pick up at the retail pharmacy or mail-order pharmacy. It's generally limited to medication dispensing and activities required by the individual state boards of pharmacy. On the other side of your coverage plan or your coverage structure, you have what we refer to as the medical benefit. And typically, specialty drugs fall into this category. Specialty drugs, for definition's sake, are those drugs that you typically need to see a specialist to prescribe. So they are covering chronic disease conditions, complex disease states. They're typically high cost. They oftentimes may be cold chain that need to be refrigerated. They're typically infused or injected in a physician office. And so those types of products are a little bit higher touch service model and administered in the physician office. They're typically infused or injected. So that higher touch side of your coverage structure is called the medical benefit. And then you also have some hybrid type products, I guess I would say, that depending on the payer and the plan and the coverage structure, they could straddle both the pharmacy benefit and the medical benefit, and we see self-injectables in that space quite often. And so when you have a self-injectable product, you really have to understand the payer-specific benefit design, and those plans could be under pharmacy or medical benefit for the self-injectables. If we look at the next slide, we've got a little bit more detail on pharmacy benefit and medical benefit. And so the first section on this table deals with a concept that is referred to as buy and bill. And typically on the pharmacy benefit side, you're not dealing with buy and bill products. You do encounter those under the medical benefit type plan. And what buy and bill means, basically that the provider, the physician's office or the provider of care is purchasing the product in advance and then billing for that later under a reimbursement structure. And so those drugs, we see this quite prevalently and in the oncology space. A lot of your chemotherapy, infused chemotherapy products are considered buy and bill products. Really any in-office infused product is a buy and bill product, whether that be in oncology, rheumatology, or any other specialty area. Also a little bit of the difference in the structure. On the pharmacy benefits side, we have better defined cost control. So those are typically handled, as well as the next one kind of goes hand in hand with this, with the National Drug Code or the NDC being more granular. So the process for determining if a product will be covered is quite automated, and so the coding is submitted and adjudicated through the pharmacy benefit manager, the PBM, and so it's very automated to understand whether or not these products are covered. And there's often a care protocol that you have to be aware of in terms of how where one product maybe need to be used first before you can try a biologic, for example. On the medical side, medical benefit side of the house, where we are, where we're dealing with more in-office administered, and typically there may be a procedure that goes along with the administration of the product, and J codes are used here as opposed to the NDC code that is submitted on the pharmacy benefit side. So a little bit of the difference in terms of how the reimbursement path is treated once you determine whether it's a pharmacy benefit or medical benefit. At this point, I will pause for questions because we've covered some big topics here quite quickly. So I'll pause for questions.
So Jennifer, at the moment we don't have questions. However, I would like to encourage our audience, please use the chat function or the Q&A function on the bottom right-hand side of the screen to interact with us. This is very much meant to be an active webinar, and we encourage you to ask any questions you have throughout the event. So back to you, Jennifer.
Okay, perfect. And so then we'll move into the next set of slides where we talk about some of the basics around the types of payers and fundamentals of payers. And so if we move to the next slide, we first understand that we're dealing with in the payer arena, we're talking about who's taking really financial risk for the patients and the users of the products that are being sought reimbursement for. And so we've got federal and commercial payers. So under the left side of this slide, so for individuals and families, the government is a large payer. And government programs really cover 3 areas: Medicare, Medicaid, and military. And we're going to talk a bit more about Medicare and Medicaid on the next slide, so I'll pause there for a minute. Military obviously covers our active service men and women, as well as veterans. In the accountable care organization space, we have really an emerging, I guess it's been emerging now for the last probably 5 to 8 years, where health systems and groups of providers have come together to handle the well-being for a group of patients, and really work together to minimize readmissions and maximize outcomes. And so accountable care organizations are out there as another provider of payment. And then private insurance under commercial. So we've got managed Medicare and managed Medicaid, so where you've got some of the third-party managers of federal programs, special needs plans, Medigap plans for those folks who want different supplemental situations to their federal programs, and then the healthcare exchange as a source that we've all heard a lot about in the news lately for to obtain insurance. On the right-hand side of the slide, we've got payment for larger groups. So here we have private insurers. So these are your household names, your Aetnas, Cignas, Uniteds, who offer commercial plans, and then the self-insured programs. Mainly they're employer groups and others who have a large population, and they may choose a commercial third party to administer the plan, but the self-insured group or the employer group is actually taking the financial risk and bearing that risk. So let's dig in a little bit more on the next slide around the federal sources of payment. And so the first is Medicare. Medicare is a federal program that uses private insurance companies to administer health insurance. So Medicare is generally for the 65 and older population, as well as folks who fall under other certain special circumstances. And to be eligible for Medicare, you also have to have paid into the system during your pre-retirement years. And so certain populations that are exempt from paying into Medicare obviously then are not eligible for Medicare once they reach age 65. Medicaid is a program that is jointly run by the federal and state governments. So it's a federal program that is state administered to provide free and reduced cost health insurance to economically disadvantaged adults and children. So this could be income level or due to disability or other reasons that someone could qualify for Medicaid. So that's the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. Both are federally funded programs, and they operate under the CMS umbrella. The next slide just gives you a little bit of a Venn diagram to show where in these two federal populations where your Medicare eligible folks would sit, your Medicaid eligible, and then in the middle we have a group that we refer to as dual eligible. And so this is your 65 and older, typically 65 and older population that is economically disadvantaged or disabled, has a number of chronic conditions. So you can be, depending on your circumstance, considered a dual eligible. Now we've spoken a lot about the federal side of things, and that's because it's important to understand where the federal programs are in terms understanding an issue and where they set reimbursement. So typically the federal programs will set policy, and then that policy is typically then adopted by the commercial payer. And so that's why I spent a bit of time digging into the different types of federal payers. On the commercial side, commercial payers, we have a number of options where individuals and families obtain coverage. So we've got, you can look for coverage either as an individual plan, a small or large group plan, or self-insured plan. A number of managed care organizations out there. We spoke a bit about the accountable care organizations a while ago. Your HMOs, PPOs, health maintenance organizations, preferred provider organizations. These are very traditional ways that we think of health insurance. Managed Medicare, again, is a third-party administered Medicare plan. Same with managed Medicaid. And then on the right-hand side of this slide, as we understand the ACOs, they're digging a little bit deeper on the ACOs. That may be a new term to some of you, so we wanted to dig into that a little bit. The ACO is, again, like I said, a healthcare provider who come together to deliver coordinated, high-quality care with the aim of this program being a better care experience and improved outcomes and reduced costs. And so that's why we're starting to see more and more of these health systems and hospital groups, provider groups, becoming the payer in many instances. Moving on to the next slide. More information about the commercial payers. So we have the large multinationals. So we talked about those household names. So you've got Aetna, Cigna, Humana, United, those, as well as a number of the national for-profit Blues plans, regional plans. So this, again, is usually under the Blue Cross Blue Shield umbrella, but a regional plan, and then some examples of the accountable care organizations that are out there. On the right-hand side of this slide, we've got some of the safety net plans, and so these would be plans that help folks or provide sponsored or supplemented costs to or premium to folks who would maybe fall in a bit of a Medicaid gap or need some supplemental coverage to those plans. And then self-insurance, typically large employers or union groups that offer a benefit plan, but are bearing the financial risk. One thing that is really important is the need to understand your patient population. So as you're bringing a new product, new drug to market, where does your population sit? Are they, is it a product that is mainly used in the over 65 population? Is it a product that is for women's health and or in the maternity space? And so understanding where your patient sits and have a strategy for approaching each payer. And we'll talk a bit about, Jan will talk a bit about developing your reimbursement strategy further on in this presentation, but one thing why we spent quite a bit of time kind of trying to understand the different payers that are out there, they each have different things that they're looking for in terms of how they determine what coverage is appropriate for different products. So I'll pause here again for questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Jennifer. So we actually have had a couple of questions that have come in, and the first is, in a prior slide, you broke down your descriptions into two groups, pharmacy versus medical, and I believe this is pharmacy benefit versus medical benefit. And the question is then, does medical mean medical devices only as opposed to drugs, so that medical devices fall under a J code?
No, actually drugs also are sometimes covered under the medical benefits. That happens for mainly office-administered type products. So most your chemotherapies, your infused multiple sclerosis, infused rheumatology products would fall under medical benefit. Anything that has to be administered under under the care of a health practitioner will typically fall under medical benefit. Jan, I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, you are exactly right. Medical device would then be moved under medical, but Jennifer is absolutely correct that there are drugs that move under that medical benefit.
Okay. Our second question is, who would be covered by an ACO, or an Accountable Care Organization?
Sure, and that will typically be, you know, obviously anyone who is seen or purchases a premium under that ACO, but you see it a lot where there's a group of practitioners that are coordinated and can take full risk for a population, for a given population.
An example of that might be, for instance, in the California and Western region, a very popular one might be Kaiser Permanente.
Correct.
So it's just a physician group that isn't an HMO, it's now an Accountable Care Organization.
Correct.
Okay. And then our third question is, on the current slide, why does only Blue Cross say for-profit when there are other for-profit organizations also, such as Cigna, Humana, United Healthcare?
Yeah, I think we were just making a differentiation between some of the Blue Cross is quite a large banner that a number of plans fall under, and so some of the Blues are for-profit and some are not, and so we've got you typically would see the Anthem, the Care First, those more national players up in the multinational group, and those are all for-profits.
Thank you. That is all for the questions for right now. So I believe we're moving on to Jan.
Yes.
And thank you, Jennifer and Chris. So I'm going to be talking about fundamentals of coding. So when we talk about the different types of coding, this is important for a manufacturer to understand, because the manufacturer is responsible for putting their strategy together on how they're going to educate the market. So the FDA, once they approve your drug, you then need to look at these types of affiliations, associations, coding components to put your strategy together. So to begin with, the NDC is a national drug code, and as Jennifer referred to, this mostly sits on the pharmacy benefit side. It's very automated. It's very quick to go ahead and find out if you've got coverage under these codes. Then in addition, you need to be thinking about what we refer to as the HCPCS, the HCPCS code, and this is around procedural coding. So for example, does there need to be a specific specimen drawn ahead of time? Is there an infusion process that needs to take place and your tubing that goes along with that? So additional components that need to be put in when there's reimbursement around a particular drug. And then there's the CPT code, and that's the procedural terminology. So maybe a frozen section needs to be taken care of, or genetic testing needs to happen prior to your drug being utilized. And you'll see more and more of this information coming into play as drugs come to market that may be what we refer to as targeted drugs, meaning that they're for a specific type of cell that is occurring in that disease process and are given at a specific point. The other thing to take into consideration is a level 2 code, which may be your J code. And that J code, when you first come to market around an injectable, may not be in place. A J code is considered permanent, where you may have a Q code assigned. The other component that just occurred this January 1st is switching from ICD-9 to ICD-10. And these are international classifications of diseases and help streamline the process of payment. And these, again, there's been a change due to the more targeted drugs and the specification of the drugs that are coming to market rather than really broad-spectrum drugs in these different classes of disease. So if you go to the next slide, what you need to consider when looking at all these different codes is how is your physician going to be reimbursed? What are all their costs in giving your particular drug? For example, does your drug need to be monitored? Does the patient need to sit and remain in the chair for 30 minutes after being given an injection or an infusion? And so you'll need to think about that when you go for your coding so that the physician is reimbursed for that time of that patient sitting in that chair and being observed. If you do not have that strategy correctly down and your competitor does, then your physician may write for your competitor's drug. Once a J code is put in place, which is a permanent code, the Q code will be removed. But there's a length of time that takes to happen. You have to remember that it's only on a regularly scheduled basis that payers' databases are uploaded or given new codes into. And so you need to be thinking about that as you put your strategy together. National codes are only updated once a year. So if you hit that mark and come out after January 1, you need to be thinking about how you're going to be educating the reimbursement staff within a physician's office, how they're going to submit for payment, and any additional information they need to provide. And I'm going to go into a little bit deeper dive in some strategies as we go forward. These are things that you need to keep in mind. Next slide. So when you look at this ICD-10, and this is mandatory, so the physician's practice needs to appropriately assign an ICD-10 code when they are prescribing a drug. It may mean that your drug will not be reimbursed because the physician has utilized a wrong code. So again, to fully understand what your particular disease process is, how the ICD-10 reads out, and then to put your strategy together around all of these areas. Next slide. Let's take a deeper dive into what actually occurs with the label and then who's responsible for it. So under the National Drug Code, NDC, what's going to occur is the left-hand box is assigned by the FDA, and that's a tracking mechanism assigned to a particular manufacturer. And then where you get into the other two sections of the box, this is assigned by the manufacturer. And this again helps with tracking. So for example, if there's a recall that needs to happen, or if you have some risk mitigation strategies assigned by the FDA where you need to track the specific drug and strength, the product number, as well as the specific measurement, such as this 80-milligram tablet. And then on the segment 3, it's your package size and code, and then assigned with the drug count. And as you can see on the far right-hand side, this gives you a view of what that looks like. All of this information is key in order for a drug to be distributed throughout the United States. Next slide. So just want to really put a notation here that having a code does not guarantee coverage or payment. It really gets down to specifically how that physician is reimbursed, and if there are other managed care situations that are put in place because the barrier or the payer wants to control their cost. So we're going to move through the next level at this point. So when you're going for your application, some of the things you need to think about as you set up your clinical study is how it will support the label that you want to have at the end. So you need to demonstrate through a randomized controlled clinical trial. You need to submit specific peer-reviewed journal articles. And then you need to understand and have the documentation around when the drug was cleared by the FDA, and also a 510K summary, if appropriate, and data for sale. And then all of this needs to be submitted in order to get a HCPCS code assigned to you. So again, as you think about your drug going to market, you need to plan, one, for these intervals and time constraints to get all of this submitted, because you may have pushback and clarification that's required. And you need to think then again about your filing with the payers. And they're going to want all of this specific information as you go out and they have to load their formularies. Next slide. So when you get into the situation of filing for the HCPCS codes, you need to be looking at key dates. I'm going to be talking about some of the specific ones that you need to be watching for. So currently, today there are 10 regions of Medicaid and Medicare offices. This used to be made up of 18, and there's been consolidation. And you need to look at when each of these regions of the country are going to be loading their formularies and putting this data into their system and looking for these deadlines. And they will have specific packets of information that need to be provided to them in order to meet the data that gets loaded into the system. And you can find that on the CMS.gov website to get a better understanding of general HCPCS information, the regional offices that need to have filings submitted to. And then from there, you will take it out to the commercial payers. But to begin with, you want to make sure you have your filings down with Medicare and Medicaid. Next slide. I'm going to stop for just a moment and see if there's any questions. That's really a lot of information I've just thrown at you. It's very complicated. It's not a slam dunk by any way, shape, or form, and especially as the managed care, Medicaid, and Medicare programs come into play. You need to really watch for those filing dates as you bring your drug out into the market. Any questions?
So, Jen, we actually do have a couple of questions. The first is just a general question, which is it possible to get a recording of this webinar? And I'd like to just remind our audience that these Hangouts are recorded and will be captioned and then posted onto the NHLBI YouTube channel, where they're available in a playlist under NHLBI Small Biz Hangouts. And then the questions that are much more specific to content are, the first one is, how do MSDRG codes fit in?
So the medical device codes is what I believe is being referred to there. And so again, they have specific filings that are mandated as well, and they will go through the same process between Medicare and Medicaid and then out to the commercial. And what needs to happen again is you'll look at, for the HCPCS codes, the procedural codes that will need to be put in place for monitoring a medical device, or if there is a procedure where maybe a certain component, electrode needs to be embedded, that needs to be considered as well.
Okay. Our next question is, how long is the gap between FDA approval and getting reimbursement codes, if any?
So there absolutely is a gap. So depending on your filing time frames, it can be anywhere from 3 months up to 6 to 9 months, depending on when you miss these filing dates to get it loaded into the system. So for example, if you are approved January 1 by the FDA, you want to make sure you have all your stand-ready submission packets ready to go so that you can hit that March 1 loading with the managed care Medicaid programs. If you don't, then you're going to have to wait in probably June or July. So again, you just need to look at the filings. So there can be several delays in that whole specific area. If your drug receives a Q code, you'll want to go out and educate physicians about that Q code, and then you'll need to educate the payers so that they have a stand-ready packet and understanding with the Q code. And why I stop and refer to that is, if you have a Q code, so you've got an injectable that is receiving a temporary code, that's an automatic stoppage in the automated system, and there will be payment held up. And so you want to provide your physician offices and the payers with specific information around that so that reimbursement can occur and that they will understand why there's a temporary code when a permanent code is coming out.
Okay. And our next question is, how similar is this process between devices and pharmaceuticals?
It's very similar, very similar.
Okay. So then, considering an example such as, for instance, coronary angioplasty, how would various components of the procedure be reimbursed?
Okay. So coronary angioplasty, you're going to have a procedural code that needs to take place, and so you'll have to make sure that there's one assigned to your specific drug, and then there'll be an infusion of the drug as well during that procedure, and so that's what will be reimbursed under the medical benefit.
So you can have a mixed pharmacy benefit and medical benefit in the same procedure.
You definitely can. In this particular, when you talk about an infusion within a clinic or a hospital, more than likely it's going to fall under the medical benefit and not the pharmacy benefit, though. And so you just want to make sure there's a procedural code attached or defined along with the actual medical benefit for the cost of the drug.
Okay. Well, thank you. That reaches the end of the questions that have been submitted thus far. So back to the presentation.
Great. Fundamentals of payment. So as we look at different classes of drugs, and why this has become so very, very important is that in 1983 and 1997, different classifications of drugs occurred. And that all really came about because of the AIDS epidemic, and the FDA was really cited as not being proactive and meeting unmet needs for specific patient populations. And so with that, our President George Bush and then following President Obama passed specific legislation that allowed for tax breaks, incentives to be put in place to bring drugs to market faster. So prior to the orphan and ultra-orphan classifications of drugs, there are 45-plus basic classifications of drug in which they are brought to market under. And these are really identified around disease specific or mechanism of action. And of course, you can imagine they've become more sophisticated and more detailed over the last 20 years as different drugs have come to market. So today's drugs that are coming to market are really looking to come under, most often, orphan and ultra-orphan, just because they can come to market faster. There's specific grants that they can apply for, and there's tax breaks that are being put in place as they come to market. There's different trial incentives that are in place as well. So you can have smaller trial groups. You can actually have down to, in the rare disease area, as small as 2 or 3 patients in a specific trial. So it's more wide open as you come to market in these specific classes. The other thing is to make sure that you are looking at how these drugs are placed, again, under that CPT code. and where they're placed with prescriber patterns. So something to think about when you're looking at your class of drugs. Is your patient population going to be diagnosed by one specific type of physician, and then the drug's going to be given in a different area of service and under a different provider? Because then you need to be breaking down and looking at reimbursement strategy around those that are identifying, diagnosing the patient, and then those that are actually prescribing the drug, and then how you're going to go out and educate and market to those particular different areas of prescribers. So these are things to be thinking about. The next one is formulary. So where are you going to sit on the formulary? This used to be very simple. It's become very, very, difficult in managing in today's world. So to begin with, Tier 1 is generic drugs. They're typically the lowest cost. There's usually a flat rate around the copay. It may be as simple as a patient will pay $4 or $5 for copay. Tier 2, these are preferred drugs. And when they say preferred drugs, it's preferred by the payer. So they are looking for specific incentives that they may be getting from a manufacturer, their specific price rates that they're getting, et cetera. And then as you move into Tier 3, non-preferred drug, and there's a higher rate of copay. And then as you move into Tier 4 and Tier 5, and even beyond that, as you look at specific unique drugs, high cost, and much more of the copay is passed on to a patient. You may have even as much as 50 to 60% of the copay in Tier 4, 5, and 6 passed on to the patient. So as you as a manufacturer need to be thinking about what types of services you need to come to market with, such as copay support, foundational support for these out-of-pocket expenses that the patient may be incurring. And then you need to be thinking about how you can move from a Tier 4 to a Tier 3, even into a Tier 2. And it's going to be your data, your outcomes from your trials, et cetera, and then negotiation around your cost of drug that are going to move you up and down into these different tiers. Next slide. So let me stop right there and ask if there are any questions.
Hi, Jen. Yeah, there's actually a very interesting question, actually. The question is, what's the procedure for applying for codes that pertain to support services, such as language interpreters or software technology or devices for language services?
Oh, that's a great, great question. And those different types of services are just coming into the market. For example, we are just now getting procedural codes, and ICD-10 helps with this in identifying that there needs to be a deeper dive into observation, more technical components utilized in the tests that are going to be incurring, or the trending of a particular, for example, a hemoglobin 1C trending in the diabetic population when there's a glucometer in place. So these are just beginning to come into play. As far as language, I'm afraid there is no procedural code assigned to that, and around some of these softer services, there is no reimbursement code. So that's where the manufacturer needs to take a step back and look at their particular drug, the population that that drug is going to service, and look at what additional services they need to put in place under their own cost in order to get their drug utilized. Great question.
Okay, and we have another question that just came in, which is, are there similar classifications in play for medical devices as there are for drugs, the tier system, for instance, that you just described, and how would you find information about this classification system, if it exists?
Okay. Yes, it definitely does exist, and you can go on to almost any payer's formulary and look to see how they're strategizing their drugs. And then you can see that on .gov as well, the FDA.gov, some more information around different formularies and tiers. Now let me go back to the question around medical device. So at this time, to my knowledge, there is not classifications that are as stringent or difficult to manage as it is under the formulary for drugs. But you do have preferred under specific glucometers, for example, and certain other apnea monitors. And this is just really based on what the manufacturer has been able to negotiate with a particular payer. So you may be the preferred in that case, and that's because you've given them some incentive, or your outcomes data shows that it delivers the best outcome over your competitors.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions for right now.
Okay, so understanding the payer process. As we look at this, it's really important for you to understand as you're developing for a brand new drug or a new formulation of an existing drug, where you're going to end up on these particular tiers. You may be considered a me too, and so you'll need to look at that strategy on how you're going to differentiate yourself. So that really gets back into how you're structuring your trial. You need to be thinking about some different strategy as far as a benefit investigation, how that treatment is going to be covered. Is the coverage under the medical benefit or the pharmacy benefit? What are the out-of-pocket, deductibles, copay? So all of these need to go into your strategy. The same with the next slide, which talks about prior authorization and the why of a prior authorization. So any drug coming in the oncology arena today is guaranteed that there'll be a prior authorization in place. And you're going to see many of the other biologics that are coming to market, as well as medical devices, will have a prior auth in place. And that means they have to demonstrate there's a medical necessity, that the patient is on label, and that they have failed the normal treatment, if you would, in today's accepted clinical guidelines. And so that's key to understand and have that information loaded and ready to be presented to your physicians who will be prescribing or utilizing either the drug or the medical device. The next slide is really talking about health plan cost of sharing mechanisms, and these are things to be aware of, that they're going to be pushing onto the patient more and more copay. And so the patient is going to have to pay for an office visit, maybe to be tested, diagnosed, and then another copay when they come back to actually have the drug administered. Or there's copay when they go pick it up at the pharmacy. So these are things to be thinking of when you're putting together your strategy and the services that you'll need to provide to ensure that patients can get on drug appropriately. Developing your reimbursement strategy, and I'm just going to go ahead and keep moving through because of time. You need to look at standards set by CMS and always understand, is your information enough to show medical necessity? Is it on or off label? And then the private payers will follow that. So CMS sets the standard, Medicaid, Medicare, and then your private payers will follow that standard. They have a wider latitude in approving, the private payers do. Other things to be thinking about, and again, you have access to this slide deck, is to look at other data needed to support your coverage. And looking at effectiveness, comparative effectiveness, safety, quality, all of these things need to be available when you go for your strategy. And then the next slide is talking about complete a market assessment. This is where I've seen manufacturers really struggle to understand their particular market. Again, who is going to be identifying and diagnosing the patient? Is there going to be a different physician that's going to be administering the medical device or the drug itself? What's the size of the patient population? And put all of this information into your strategy. As Jennifer covered off earlier, as you get into ACOs who have higher risk at this point, they're going to be looking for managing that cost. So if your drug comes to market with that information available readily, it makes it much easier to really get a winning strategy in place. So I know that that's a bit rushed here at the end, and I apologize for that. But we'll stop now and see if there's some final questions that we can answer for you.
Hi, Jen. Yeah, we've actually got one more question that came in while you were chatting, and so the question is, for those companies that are working in the diagnostic test or assay world, do J or Q codes apply to common or special diagnostic tests? And if not, what reimbursement codes would apply?
So the J code and the Q code at that point do not apply to those tests. And those tests have a different code system. And at this moment, I actually don't recall what those codes are. I do know that you can put it under procedural testing and search underneath that under .gov, and you should be able to find the coding there. Or I'd be willing to follow up with you after and provide that information to you.
Okay, well, that actually brings us to a great point where we're starting to get a lot of questions about whether the recording will be available or the presentation, and both, yes, will be available. So I want to remind people that if you sign up for the NHLBI listserv, and that information will be provided again in a few minutes, that we will let you know when the recording is available. However, you can reach out by email to the NHLBI SBIR office, the Office of Translational Alliances and Coordination, and we can send you the deck essentially immediately once this presentation is over. And so I want to say thank you so much to both Jennifer Fillman and Jan Nielsen for their great presentation today. You ladies did a fabulous job, and I know this was a very engaged hangout, a very engaged conversation with our audience. If you could move on to the next slide, please. I'd like to just remind people that the NHLBI Small Biz Hangouts are organized and presented by the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, Office of Translational Alliances and Coordination, and we encourage anyone who is developing a product or technology within our mission space to contact us through our website for any additional assistance or questions that you might have. If you are developing a biomedical product or technology that is outside of NHLBI's mission space, we encourage you to please reach out to a program official in an appropriate institute at the National Institutes of Health for additional assistance. And you can find a list of the SBIR and STTR or small business contacts at the email address listed here. What I'd like to do now is just leave this last slide up. Please forward to the last slide, and encourage you to just take note of the email address, nhlbi_SBIR@mail.nih.gov, and that will, allow you to reach out to us for slides or with additional questions, which I will be happy to forward to Jen or Jennifer. And please do join our listserv, because we put these seminars together quite regularly, and if you found this one to be informative, I'm sure that you'll find some of our future topics to be equally interesting. So I thank you all for your attention today, and if you can take just a few more moments out of your day and answer the pop-up or new window that will come up with the survey, we would appreciate any feedback you have about today's presentation. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.